Hey everybody, it's Tony Sweet and Captain Ron. We are here because we have more speakers from Contact in the Desert. We have two great guests for you today, and we are going to introduce them both right now. We have Professor Michael Dennin, he's been a professor of physics and astrology at the UCI since 1997, the year I was born.
I'll fact check that while you're.
Yeah, please do. Fake news. And now the provost of teaching and learning and dean, division of undergrad education. His research focuses on the dynamics of foams. That's kind of interesting. Dust in the lungs and modeling of ice chunks. What? We're going to have to find out about that because last time I had ice chunks. Well, I won't
That's
go
your
there.
business, Tom.
Right. He has appeared on numerous television programs, including Ancient Aliens. And then joining him today, we have, they're going to be doing a panel at Contact in the Desert. We have Daniel J. Glenn. Daniel is an independent digital producer and podcast host. He has created several shows that exist at the intersection of pop culture and science, including podcast, fascinating gadgets, gizmos, and gears-based technologies, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So please welcome to Truth Be Told, the one and only Daniel J. Glenn and Michael Dennin. Hey guys, how you doing?
The two and only.
Yeah, two
and only.
Oh, great! It's great to be here.
Good seeing you again, Michael.
Yep, good to be back.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
This is the absolute perfect time to have Michael Dennin on the show because he's been on a couple times before, and we've always had a good time with him. But in the last 30 days, I think there's been more black hole stories, Tony, in mainstream media than I've seen in I don't know when. We had the black hole picture, which has never been happened before. We had the V404 Cygni. And then we have that just recently, the neutron star smashed into a black hole. So I thought if we could just take a minute, Michael, and let's go over each of those three things, if you would. Let's talk about this picture.
Well, the picture, I think, is one of the most exciting pieces. And one of the cool things about it is people, I don't think, really appreciate how small the black hole looks in the sky because of how far away it is. And I saw a great statistic. It's like trying to see an orange on the moon from the Earth.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how small it is. And what we had to do to be able to see it is you ideally want to build a telescope the size of the Earth to get the resolution to see something that small. And the trick to that is you can't build one the size of the Earth. So you connect a whole bunch of radio telescopes that are very far apart. And effectively, the size of a telescope is the largest distance between any two radio telescopes you use. And so that's how astronomers were able to construct that image. It's actually, though there's color in it, it's actually a radio image. It uses radio telescopes to see it because that's one of the big signals coming out of black hole areas are radio waves. So that's kind of the cool feature of that. And it was really getting the coordination to get these telescopes from other countries, other sides of the planet together. And then you actually have to image for a long time. It's kind of a time-lapse photo.
Right, you have to keep that aperture open and sit there, right?
Yep, and sit there, and you just get these astronomers to work together, and voila, you actually have a picture of a black hole. What you really have, of course, is a picture of the shadow of the black hole. Because the black hole itself emits no light, but it blocks light behind it and other things, and there's light coming from the edge of it. So that the dark part in the center, the thing you don't see is the black hole.
I believe it's 55 million light years away.
Yeah.
It's insane that we're able to take a picture of something that far away, right, Tony?
Exactly. And like I said, the trick was hooking up a bunch of telescopes that are far apart together.
Incredible. Okay, what about this next one, this V404 Cygni that they discovered it in 89, and it's 8,000 light years away. But talk about the plasma clouds and the way that this is very unique compared to the other ones we've seen.
Well, I think one of the things to realize, one of the fun things about astronomy, and, you know, my official title, right, is I'm in our Department of Physics and Astronomy, and I study foams. So people wonder, okay, why do I get to talk about astronomy? But I have a lot of astronomer friends and I love it. But when you talk about pictures of black holes and things they're doing and like the uniqueness of this one, you realize that we just haven't seen a lot yet. So in fact, almost any one we look at is going to be somewhat unique. And that's exciting because it's not like you can build a black hole in your lab. and then study it under a controlled experiment like you would a lot of other phenomena in physics. You're really stuck with what you can find out in the sky and what science gives you. So this was a unique chance. We saw, as you've mentioned, these unique structures, the unique behavior of the plasmas, how things are interacting with the black hole and its own unique environment. And it gives us one more peek into the type of things we can see out there in space and how varied they are.
It's very interesting that you say how no matter what, if we see one, it's so rare to see one that it's going to be unique anyway. It's like that guy we had on about the planets, Tony, where they said at this point there'll probably be planets that are completely a diamond.
Oh, yeah.
And completely water and completely
metal.
something else.
Yeah.
It's just like there's going to be everything because there's so many.
Exactly. No, and that's right now, I think science proceeds when we build a new tool. And we really, between what we've been able to do with computers, I don't think people really understand how much of astronomy now is computers crunching data for you. You can really get a lot of extra data, but also we actually use amateur astronomers. You have all these people hooked up with their telescopes, feeding the data to professional astronomers and crunching through that data. And then, like we said, with the earlier black hole, connecting telescopes far apart, we have these tools we've never had before, and we're going to see a lot of new exciting things. Whether, like you said, whether it's diamond-coated planets, completely water planets. We've already found a couple totally water planets in areas and ranges where there's likely to be life. That's exciting. And so a lot of new things happening.
And then this one also, it talks about dragging space-time.
Right.
Why don't you explain that to me and Tony and our audience, because that seems like a high concept.
Right. So actually, I think the best way to think about it, the images I've seen, right, most people at some point have loosely heard about how gravity, as Einstein now understands it, is space and time being bent. And the picture you'll often see is a rubber sheet with a mass sitting on top of it, right? And if you put something heavy on a rubber sheet, the rubber sheet bends.
You sleep on rubber sheets, right, Tony?
I have to.
Yeah,
See?
exactly.
Right. With the gerbils?
It'll be an interesting group of your audience that is particularly familiar with rubber sheets.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Extraordinarily.
So, but that bending of space-time is what's often talked about. But if you think about it for a moment, and maybe, another good example is just sticking an object in water, or like really thick syrup. As you stick it through, the water distorts and bends around it. And now if you start moving it in any interesting way, it will drag it with it. And actually, black holes can be massive enough that they actually start dragging and distorting space-time. And space-time moving will change the properties of light and other things around it in ways that we can measure and observe with the telescopes.
Can black holes develop anywhere, anytime, or because
no, they all come from a very massive star that collapses.
Okay. I was just making sure. I didn't.
No, that's their core means of creation.
And how long do they usually last? I mean, I couldn't imagine forever. I mean, or
that's an interesting question. For the most part, people understood black holes as being permanent. Once you make it, you have it. There's been work, and Stephen Hawking was famous for this before he passed away, that looks at how a black hole might evaporate. And it's a weird, interesting process. At the edge of the black hole, you can actually have matter-antimatter pairs get created. And the matter gets ejected out, and the antimatter goes into the black hole and actually destroys some of the matter in the black hole. And that's actually a way for it to evaporate slowly. And so there's predictions about what sort of black holes would evaporate and how long that would take.
Well, and this one is absolutely massive too. It's 9 times the size of our sun, roughly.
Wow.
Yes, I believe that's right. Yeah.
That's just insane. And then let's talk about the third black hole story. How often do you get black hole stories? So I haven't heard of one in years.
No, exactly.
3 this month, and I thought how great to have this guy.
Yeah.
So this latest thing is a neutron star, which they've never seen before, apparently smashed into a black hole.
Well, again, this goes to the earlier statement. There is so much happening out in space, and we have to get lucky to catch it.
Well, it probably happens every day. We just don't know.
I mean, I joked. Someone once asked me, why do I think there are aliens out there somewhere? And I said, look, the universe is so big, it's a big waste of space if there isn't other life, pun intended. But you've got this situation, right? We know there's a lot of binary star systems out there. And And there's a lot of places where stars are close together. So it's completely expected that somewhere there's a neutron star, which is a very dense, massive star that wasn't dense enough to make a black hole, near another massive star that made a black hole. And given that, the neutron star would likely be in orbit, but an orbit that's slowly decayed and eventually crash into it. And we just got lucky, found one of these happening.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Well, Daniel, we're going to bring you in here, and I know coming up on Contact, you guys are going to be doing a lecture. Looking forward to this, and we're doing the FGGGBT. Right on.
GBT.
I know. And so, could you explain a little bit more what you're going to be discussing at Contact, and especially when it comes to the alien technologies?
I would love to. May I ask Dennin a question? Because
please do. Take over the show.
Hey, welcome to Truth Be Told. I'm your host.
There we go. Vacation. No,
no, I love that idea about evaporating black holes, because what's interesting about that, Dennin, I want you to kind of like clarify for me if you could. Doesn't the rate at which the black hole takes in matter have to be less than the rate at which it can create antimatter to destroy that matter in order for it to evaporate? Does that make sense?
That does. And that's why a lot of this would depend on its environment. So you would imagine black holes, there's only so much matter around them when they form. So late in its life, maybe there's nothing else falling into the black hole. It's kind of got an area around it where it's kind of depleted the matter. And now it's basically just ejecting matter away and slowly evaporating.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Dan, did you have any questions for Tony? I'm just checking.
I love you. I love your name, man. T Sweet. That is like, you guys have the coolest names in the hosting business. Like, like only Captain Crunch is above you, Captain Ron.
Right.
I thought you were calling Captain Ron Captain Crunch.
No. I'm not a real captain, but we don't like to talk about that on the air.
Yeah,
people get confused.
I won't tell you where he got his name, stripper.
My business.
No, that's fair enough.
So let's talk about some of these gadgets, man. This is right up my alley too. I love technology and gadgets and stuff. What kind of stuff are you guys going to be?
Batteries included.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I'll tell you. So a cool segue from black holes. One of the things that kind of got me interested in black holes, which goes into gadgets, is the John Titor story, which I think has kind of been told. I think it's kind of been revealed as a hoax now.
He's the time traveler. Just if anyone doesn't know, he's the time traveler that claims to have come back and he's getting parts for his computer or whatever.
Right. It was a very specific computer from 1973 IBM. Yeah. Anyway, what was cool about it is a lot of the stuff he talked about in his manual, he posted a lot of his manuals online, was this idea that he harnessed black holes, 2 black holes specifically, and was able to use that to bend space and time to travel back in time. And I thought that was such an interesting idea. And so that's not really what formed the genesis of Fascinating Gadgets and Gizmos, FGGBT. But I think that's a really cool topic to think about. Like, that would be something we would talk about at the panel. We're not going to. I don't know. Maybe it'll be a surprise entry. But that kind of stuff that we talk about, like how could we harness the power of a black hole and then use it to our advantage to travel through time? Is that possible? Dennin, is that possible? I'll ask you. I think that's
well, I think one of the cool things about our panel, and unfortunately Ben Siepser, our third person, couldn't be here.
Our enigmatic engineer.
Right. We have an interesting combination in that when we look at these gadgets and gizmos, there's often a fundamental physics question. Could you even harness a black hole? Could you do something with that? Can you harness space and time? And then there's the question of, well, maybe you could, but can you actually do it practically? And what would it take in the energy? So Ben is our calculating man of 1,000 calculations who calculates for Dan and I if our crazy ideas would actually ever work.
There's got to be no way. No way it's got to be his answer, because a black hole is so massive and so powerful. I can't even imagine even ETs being able to harness that.
Right. So you probably can't harness a black hole, but what would it take to even begin to manipulate space and time? And one of the things that, I regularly talk about and I think is of interest to people, we know the parallel. We manipulate electricity and magnetism all the time. Like, that's what we do as society. Our society is all based, all of our technology is electromagnetic. And we can do that because there's positive and negative charges. And we very quickly figured out how to manipulate a world with positive and negative charges. As far as we can tell, gravity only attracts. But we're learning about dark matter. We're learning about dark energy. Dark energy appears to be this property of the universe that actually repels and accelerates things from a gravity point of view. So if you could reframe what we do in electricity and magnetism with gravity, it would be really interesting what technology you can build. The other challenge, electricity and magnetism turns out to be really strong. Gravity turns out to be rather weak, actually, though if you get enough mass together, it is strong. And so those are the physics that come in. And then, you can start thinking, like I said, about the technology and calculating. And you're right, you probably find out manipulating the whole black hole hard, manipulating space and time in other ways gets very interesting.
Interesting. Seems beyond the realm of possibility to me, sitting here knowing nothing about this. It just seems...
Captain Ron, we make it a possibility. It will change your mind.
Well, what sort of other practical gadgets or gizmos that people can use in their daily lives?
Yeah, we come up. So what we typically do, the way the show works, is we look at pop culture, movies, television, comics, and we'll find an interesting piece of technology, and then we'll explain how that kind of could exist in real life. So, for example, one of the ones we haven't done on the show, but I would love to do, and again, I should probably mention, the things we have on the show are typically the types of technologies that people don't really talk about. Like everyone talks about warp drive, lightsabers, battleships, stuff like that. But we talk about some of the hidden technologies. So one is in the movie Back to the Future. When he goes back in time, there's this thing called a rehydrator. So basically what happens is they take a small pizza, it's about this big, it's dehydrated, and they put it in a Black & Decker rehydrator, and they pull it out, and 7 seconds later, you got this full pizza. I think that could be extraordinarily practical. Could we do that? Like, could we rehydrate at that speed? That could be one that we kind of talk about. That's practical. That doesn't go into the black hole thing,
Now, you're touching on something here, though, that, Michael, I believe you've also done stuff where you've looked at superhero tech. Like you did Batman tech, Superman tech, where you watch these movies and you analyze whether or not that could actually, in fact, happen practically, right?
Right. So that's why Dan brought me into the show, is for that physics
I
side.
couldn't think of a single reason why, but that now we got to it. Good.
Now the connection is made.
All right.
I think the other one from the alien tech point of view that for me is really practical is a lot. It seems simple, but a lot around actually the putting people to sleep for long periods of time.
Captain
and
Ron.
so we started that. We actually have an episode, which Dan, I'm embarrassing myself. I can't remember if it's been live yet or if it's going to come with Han Solo. That's coming up, right?
It is not. But that's a great promo there. Great.
It's a great promo. See, I occasionally get something right. I'm a promo in a future episode.
Killing it, Dennin.
But you take something like freezing Han Solo in carbonite, but a lot of what's talked about to achieve space travel is having to put people to sleep for long periods of time, which actually ties to another technology we looked at, which was all the dreaming stuff that happened in Inception. Because to do the dreaming, you have to get people asleep. And to be honest, we don't really have quite the technology yet to put people asleep and wake them up for very, very long space flights. But you have enough of the pieces, you can imagine how it would be done. So I think the best way to describe it is we do everything from technologies that the surface look crazy, but actually we're shockingly close to, or we already do, to things like controlling black holes, which are, yes, much farther down the line. And sometimes we do have to admit, no, that can't be done, but this thing that's like it can be done. And that's kind of the fun, is figuring out what's the like it.
Well, if you remember Planet of the Apes, they put them to sleep, and that's
exactly
when they're trying to. So that's how it started. Well, we're gonna have to take a quick break because we have our amazing Contact in the Desert coming up, and both you gentlemen will be there doing a lecture, and a lot of our guests that we've had on the show, they're 100% going to be there doing their thing. And if you haven't got your tickets, please get your tickets, because this is going to be one of those years that you don't want to miss. But we have our good friend George Norrie always talking about Contact. So here we go. We'll be right back.
Join me, George Norrie, in Indian Wells, California, for the 7th Annual Contact in the Desert UFO Conference, May 31st to June 3rd. Contact in the Desert is an epic weekend of adventure filled with exciting explorations into ancient aliens, human origins, crop circles, UFO sightings, disclosure, and the newest evidence of ongoing contact. This amazing weekend offers over 50 lectures, 40 workshops, 8 exciting panels, special events, and a luncheon that I'm hosting. Contact in the Desert also features leading experts including Giorgio Tsoukalos, David Wilcock, Linda Moulton Howe, Michael Tellinger, Eric von Daniken, Doc Wallach, and many more important researchers and scientists in the field. Contact in the Desert is your place for inside information. Join us at thecontactinthedesert.com to get your tickets today. It's time to make contact. That's contactinthedesert.com. Don't miss it. Contactinthedesert.com.
We are back on Truth Be Told. Captain Ron and Tony Sweet here, and we're talking about black holes and technology and things like that. But while we're still talking about black holes, coincidentally, our next guest today is Caroline Corey, and I watched her movie last night, and I know it's a bit out there for you, Michael, because you're a very real-world scientist and you don't necessarily subscribe to the ET phenomenon. However, she thinks that there's a magnetic field around black holes that can transfer knowledge across the universe and instantaneously. Now, again, we are talking about just possibly. What are your thoughts to that? Is that maybe possible?
Well, it would be very fast, probably not instantaneous, but that's okay. I think that's one of the interesting things, and we've sometimes talked about this in aspects of the podcast. What are the other creative ways in which sort of large scale and far-reaching communication can occur? And for me, there is a very interesting space at or location at the edge of quantum mechanics and gravity, because it's the area of physics that we understand the least. We don't really know all the things that are happening there. And there are some very, very interesting directions things are going. I think the challenge that always comes up in any of these situations, and that's where our enigmatic engineer and his calculation comes in, is often things that are technically possible turn out to not work out when you try and figure out how much energy would be needed to do something like that. And for me, magnetic fields, they behave fairly normally. And so I wouldn't bet my money on that. But black holes themselves and the way space and time is warped very much could connect to other regions of space. We often hear them called wormholes or white holes or the other side. Matter's hard to get through there because of how much it gets stretched and disrupted. But information and signals, those might survive.
Well, in the new, not new, it's been like 20-some different movies for Marvel, but even Avengers, they have these wormholes or whatever you call them. Exactly. So I do think it's funny that over the years how technology in a lot of movies pretty much predict a lot of kind of what we become, and so or what's already exists that we just don't know about.
Yeah, and I've loved science fiction my whole life, and I think that's why one of the reasons I love the podcast with Dan on these gadgets and gizmos is it's scary how much almost anything predicted from science fiction in the past we've figured out how to make.
Right.
And
right,
so
the Dick Tracy thing of talking over that, we all have that on our phone.
Talking over your thing, talking over your watch, levitating magnetically. So I think with Dan and Ben and I, we're just trying to be ahead of the curve and get the next generation of everything that's right. So I don't know what you think about that, Dan, but
yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm afraid that as our listener base grows, I'm afraid that some independent inventors are going to take some of our ideas because we come really close to making fiction a reality. I think copyright's a real issue.
They may not actually send us the appropriate proceeds from their invention.
That's awesome.
Because we just, the most recent episode, we did Inception's passive device, which is basically the briefcase that allows people to enter into other people's dreams. And we actually came shockingly close on that one. I think we're maybe a decade away from walking around in each other's dreams. And, invited or uninvited, I should say.
Yeah.
Because we've had several people on, well, not several, but a few people on that, the remote viewing and doing surgeries. They claim doing surgeries from one location to another.
And again, that's Russell Targ. These are serious guys. Russell Targ, I'm sure these guys know who that is, and he is a serious scientist, and he believes that remote viewing is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
yeah.
Dennin.
No, go ahead.
Why don't you guys both talk at the same time? Go.
I think that's
It makes great radio.
Let's step on each other for the rest of the 30 minutes. So on my show, Fascinating Nouns, I interviewed. So it's not really like paranormal type show, but I've interviewed a lot of people who are in this world because I find it super fascinating. And one of the guys I interviewed was Tom Campbell, who's also I heard him being interviewed by Linda Moulton Howe. And he's a physicist. I mean, he was brought in to the Robert Monroe Institute to kind of give a real scientific approach to out-of-body experiences, being able to leave your body. And I think that there's a real connection and overlap between that and dreams. And I think it's all different experiences in this other world. And I think that there might be something there. Maybe it's remote viewing. Maybe it's, I think there's something in that world that can make dreams, people's individual experiences possible to kind of experience yourself.
Well, that you brought, when you were talking like that, I was thinking to myself that if you guys tried the newest virtual reality stuff, it is craziness.
Yeah, some of it's amazing.
And it makes you kind of feel there. And now they're talking about being able to manipulate video where they can make it look like Trump or anybody says anything. They can manipulate it.
Obama. They did that.
They did the Obama video, and they said that now it's going to be like that. So like we're almost there now where you could fake anything and make it seem that way. Kids are going to put on these virtual reality glasses, and you can't tell what's real and what's
Remember
not.
Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Sure.
They did. That was what they did.
Total Recall is exactly right, Tony.
Yeah.
That's like the extreme version of VR.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people think I'm real.
People think Captain Ron's breasts are real, but I don't know.
And hair, but it's not. It comes off with the headphones. One big piece.
It looks great.
Michael,
but I do think one of the challenges in this space, and what I like about, I hate to say what I like about what we do on the podcast, is, a lot of my colleagues wonder why I get in this space of talking about, aliens or pop culture or other things, because unfortunately, I think this does suffer from people who actually don't have any science background. And so what happens, there's a lot of noise out there in this space. There's a lot of things, if you are a scientist and you listen to it, you're just like, oh, they just got it so wrong. And so then when you actually try and discuss it, it's a little harder to break in and capture some of the audience if they know too much. And that's where I have fun. I like trying to bring in the people who may have dismissed some of this, but give them a way to think about it that kind of aligns more correctly, if that makes sense.
Couldn't agree more. The thing that frustrates me is the actual real science is awesome as it is. You don't have to add all this nonsense and fruiting around with it. You could just take it. What really is going on is amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and if I may, the movie Ready Player One is a pretty cool example of what the future looks like with VR. And one of the cool things that we talk about in the most recent episode about the passive device, and Dennin makes this great point, which is, he says, how well built are the individual body's crumple zones? Like meaning, if we have a dream, can you die in the dream? The answer is probably no. But VR, being a third-party external thing, could that kill you? We had this conversation about that, and I think it's extraordinarily interesting. We talk about Freddy Krueger because that's the main line of Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, can you die in the dream? But could you die in VR?
Look at that spoiler alert, Dan. What if somebody hasn't seen that movie?
Or the first 7, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Freddy and Jason.
Fair enough.
Well, that's that. You guys could talk about that for hours. I mean, that's a great hypothetical thing. Like, what if we create this? What would happen? I love that line of thinking. See, now someone's going to make that movie, not give you guys credit, and you're going to miss out on.
We came up with Inception 2 while we were shooting. I'm Christopher Nolan. I'm waiting for the phone call.
Awesome.
And I do think a lot of this crosses over nicely. What I'm excited about, and one of the reasons when Contact reached out to me, I proposed this panel, is there's a nice juxtaposition between what shows up as alien technology in popular culture and what we would expect or require or an alien culture would actually need if they were visiting us or interacting, or if we were ever to detect them or visit them. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun for people to come and see this panel because they'll see those connections being made. And one of the things that always frustrates me is there's a little bit of a sense in some groups that, well, if we can't understand it, therefore it must be alien technology. And my view is, advanced technology is just cool technology we haven't figured out yet, and we should be smart enough to figure it out. So, like, not knowing it right now doesn't make it necessarily alien technology. And so thinking about how to do all of this stuff is what we're doing every day in engineering and science anyway. And so it's just an exciting space to be in from that perspective.
It is interesting that they reach out to you. Ancient Aliens, you've been on, all 10 seasons or whatever, right? You've been you're one of the few guys who've been on since the very beginning.
I am called the last remaining friendly skeptic on Ancient Aliens.
Right, you are. And I love seeing you on there. And the reality is your position, even though you're on Ancient Aliens, even though they reach out to you for alien ideas, your position is that you do not believe that aliens have been to Earth, correct?
Correct.
And I think that's fascinating. And then you try to explain these things like with the technology. What do you honestly think we were able to, on our own humans, do like the stones at Baalbek or Ollantaytambo or...
Yes. And you know what? I'll tell you, my number one reason is, so I'm a physicist and we tend to build our own pieces of equipment and our own experiments. And as a grad student, I spent a lot of time in the machine shop and talking to the machinists. And I was never able to stump them. I would come up with some crazy design and say, can we make this? And they'd be like, oh yeah, we do this, this, and this. And 10 days later, I have this weird apparatus. And it convinced me of the absolute creativity of humans when it comes to building stuff.
No doubt people have that position, but can you build a 1,200 tons or 12,000 tons or whatever, the Baalbek stones?
With ropes
and I think you can, because leverage and levers and all of this stuff are amazing things. And you can constantly find people who are recreating those. But you know what? I could be wrong. And that's the beauty of it is, none of us actually were back there. And so it's a fun thing to speculate about what are the different pathways and what are the different things that could have happened.
No doubt. And I am equally open to the other possibility, which is that it wasn't necessarily it has to be aliens. It is equally possible that we had the technology and just lost it through a nuclear war or whatever.
Or other things. Yep.
So that to me is equally as strong. It doesn't have to be alien. Right. But I have a hard time understanding how people that long ago could build stones so big and move them so far. There's something else. Either we had this technology or it is, in fact.
Again, it goes back to...
One of the other things I remind people is they didn't have TV.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So they had a lot more time.
Yeah, that is true.
If you don't have to catch up on Game of Thrones, you can move very large stones.
What were you going to say, brother?
No, I was going to say it goes back to the same movie I was talking about is Planet of the Apes. We had the technology, and they thought it was a whole different planet, and then they find out it was actually Earth that we just happened to destroy.
If I could say something here, because what's kind of interesting about that is when you look at the things, like even now we have automatic cars, right? Most people don't know how to drive a stick. It's forgotten. And that's over the course of, maybe 50 years. You're talking about, if it's not from a physics standpoint, if it's not impossible, my guess is human beings have been able to figure it out. Now, I'm going to use a pretty modern and mundane example that isn't as extraordinary as the ones you guys are giving, but I'm a big fan of Oak Island. I love the TV show. I did an episode, Fascinating Nouns, shameless plug, for Oak Island. And what I love about that is we are 300 years into this search on Oak Island. We are pretty sure that people 400 years ago put a treasure underneath. It's very Goonie style. For those who don't know, supposedly there's a treasure buried on Oak Island in Nova Scotia, Canada, and it has been it's booby trapped. So essentially, what a previous civilization did is they dug tunnels and these flood tunnels from the ocean. So anyone digging down, it's being flooded. We are still being stumped by the same problem that happened 400 years ago. And in the course of 200 years of searching for this treasure, we can't figure out how people in the 1600s were able to bury this treasure. We can't get around it. They stumped us.
I love it.
You know what I mean? Like and that's a modern example. So I'm guessing, what you're saying is not impossible.
Right. I always tell Tony, I don't know how they put lead in pencils. If we had a catastrophe here, forget the iPhone. I can't do that. I wouldn't be able to write.
Right in the middle. How do they do that?
It's
They
true.
grow the tree. They grow the tree with the.
Yeah, I guess.
With the lead in it.
So let's talk about some more examples in like some current movies that people could relate to that you guys have found that thought, that technology could actually exist.
So Dan, I'll throw out one of my favorite is silent sneakers from Black Panther. I don't know how familiar everyone is with the movie.
Yeah.
It was a small little film that
didn't do much.
I've heard great things and bad things.
Yeah. But one of the, we think of sneakers as being quiet. They had extra silent sneakers. And I loved it because we got to talk about material science, how you might design things. I get to bring in foam. My favorite topic is, as Dan knows, I'll relate anything to foam because I study it.
How'd you like to meet this guy at a party? What do you like to talk about? Foam.
Foam, yeah.
Wow.
It's a drinking game on the show. Every time you mention foam,
I like dust.
Yeah, exactly. And then we got to talk about just, noise canceling headphones, how they work. So you have these pieces of technology. The headphones are relatively simple because the headphones know where your ears are and where the sound is coming from. Sneakers, you don't know who the listener is and how to do all of it. But that was, I thought, a really fun technology to talk about. I don't know, Dan, what one of your favorites was.
Well, I love that episode, and I'm not going to give away your big moment because we make that possible. Completely silent sneakers. We need to patent this stuff. My favorite episode, for those of you who are familiar with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, I love the technology in that movie. My favorite's the Everlasting Gobstopper. And I would like to say, so basically what it is it's a piece of candy that you can suck and suck and suck. It doesn't get any smaller. And so there's obvious ways you can make it out of metal with bacteria inside that will constantly produce like a strawberry flavor, let's say, while you have it in your mouth. But I think I came up with the best idea, which is a suckable snail. So you would basically genetically modify a snail with a shell it constantly grows the shell as you kind of suck it down, and you can keep it and it store it forever. And it's
the reason that would work, Dan, is because nobody would ever put it in their mouth. Therefore, it would never get any smaller and last forever.
Yeah, I think I would.
Either way, it works, right?
It does work.
You talked about Black Panther. The one that really stuck out to me is when she made the device the suit where if you hit the suit, it would automatically fix itself, so it would correct it. So the next time that person hits you, it would repel it.
Right, and absorbs energy.
Yeah, absorb it.
One of the things, I point out to people is just think about car technology, right? Cars originally were designed to protect you by being really heavy steel objects, almost like tanks, or as close to tanks as you could get. And that had certain good qualities and worked well. Has some problems from a physics point of view, because if an object's too rigid, the energy can end up in you and not the car, and you get injured and not the car. Now, you don't have to fix your car after the crash, but you're injured. Now cars are designed with crumple zones, where you have an accident, you hit, you brush against something a little softly and your car crumples. So you have to fix the car after the accident, but it takes all the energy.
Why is he talking about this?
Because.
No, I'm saying I was in a car accident yesterday.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no.
I thought you were bringing that up because of this.
Yeah, this is like dramatic. I don't think we should move on.
Okay, so we'll skip that.
You'll make him cry. So.
Right.
But the suit, designing a suit is really the next generation of what we're doing with bulletproof. The bulletproof vest has a particular design, but you still tend to get bruised, and as some of the energy gets to you, you then move to ceramic plates that shatter and absorb the energy. That's something different. And I think the next step in material science, I have to say, is something like the Black Panther suit.
Don't you think that would actually come
right now? But it's not, I think, insane.
And Michael, they have the invisibility cloak is a real thing as well.
The invisibility cloak is real, except for one challenge. It's made out of ceramic, so it's hard to shape to you and flow and make really.
Well,
cool
to me, yes, it would be. I don't think they make this size, but
right, yeah, but they have the invisibility jar, right? It's a ceramic jar you can stand in and be invisible.
Is that right?
Well, I don't know if they've made one that big, but that's basically
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
What?
I don't know if they made one that big.
Yeah, right.
That's funny.
What about what do you think about? And I think this is very possible. Is Iron Man his suit? I don't.
I'll let you take that. The Iron Man suit.
You want me to take it?
Yeah, go.
Well, I do want to tell you that we did a whole thing on bulletproof skin with Luke Cage. We just put out an episode about that where we talk about there's a million different ways you can make things bulletproof and store and switch energy out, including Dennin's favorite. We got a phone there. Yeah. Iron Man suit is really cool. We did an episode on Iron Man suit as well. And what I love about Iron Man suit is it does like several different things. It's a communicator. It's defense and it's flight and energy energy weapons.
Right.
And so we had to kind of break down each system because there's 4 different systems in that. And I think to a degree, most of those are possible except for the plasma burst because you have to generate so much energy. Then you could talk about that. But as far as the protection we can do, as far as the flight, I think that's possible. And the communication is extraordinarily possible. Iron Man suit is not the later iterations where it's nanotechnology that just comes up, but Iron Man suit from the first not the first movie where he makes it as a prisoner of war or as a prisoner, but his more modern suit that's a little more the first one he makes in the first movie that can do all of those things. I think that's possible.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I just always thought, as soon as a lot of these governments saw that, and they're like, "Man, that's a good idea." And I couldn't imagine like these people like landing on foreign shores, and going.
It's just like these guys were saying earlier. The old sci-fi shows like Dick Tracy or whatever, we have that now.
Right.
So now we're watching Iron Man. 100 years from now, they'll have that, and they'll be watching something else.
Right.
Yep, exactly.
They're making cyborgs. I mean, DARPA has a lot of the stuff we use. One of the things I try to make sure we include, it's kind of my thing on the show, is in real life, uses of this technology. And DARPA is creating lots of cybernetic pieces, to carry backpacks or to help with your legs to run over terrain. And a lot of stuff happening in the robot world is just fantastic. So Iron Man may not be piloted by a human being. We may have robots that can do all of those things.
Didn't even think of that. That's a great idea. Exactly. That's what they say. ETs that came here, there is a school of thought that the ETs that came here are in fact robotic because they wouldn't send out biological things. They would send out robotics like we would. We send out probes. Nothing personal,
that's
Tony.
Exactly what we're doing.
I was hoping you would.
Yeah. That makes sense.
The other quick comment for a UCI plug, right here at UCI, we have faculty working on connecting robotic legs, arms to humans through a computer connection. And you can actually train your brain to control the arms and legs and function and make them work.
That's so awesome.
It's amazing how flexible the human brain is and what it can do.
Oh, we just did an episode on Doc Ock's arms. Not to keep promoting every episode, we're just hitting on all the stuff we tackled. Dr. Octopus, as most people know, was able to control 4 robotic arms with his mind. Using similar things like that. The enigmatic engineer Ben Siepser, our third member of the Brain Trust, he works at a place that is really working at the cutting edge of connecting biology with technology. So Doc Ock's arms are very possible. UCI is at the forefront of that as well. We're going to be very close. There's people who have amputated limbs who are able to have a cybernetic arm, very Winter Soldier-esque, and are able to do incredible things with it and control it. One guy's learning to play the piano with a cybernetic arm. How amazing is that?
It really is incredible. Absolutely incredible. I think that's one of the strongest places that this technology is used. It's wonderful to see these people get limbs back. I think that's
right.
Just amazing.
And to your earlier comment, it really connects and loops back to all of the alien technology questions. Because for me, one of the most interesting questions, one of them, among many reasons I went into physics, is I really do hope to live long enough to get into outer space. Right. And maybe someone will just shoot me there for some reason. Right. I don't know.
Your ashes, maybe.
My ashes or something. But I do think it's these disparate pieces coming together. You need the kind of right robotic technology. You need the right technology. Are you going to use special relativity where you take advantage of time dilation, but you go to sleep for large chunks of time? How are we eventually going to colonize space where we're getting to the pieces that you need to do that?
And I'd like to say for the panel we're doing Contact in the Desert, what I love about it is it's kind of irrelevant on whether what people believe to be, quote unquote, real alien technology versus fictional technology. It's kind of irrelevant, right? Like the stories people are telling, people who claim to be abducted, contactees, the stuff they're talking about is incredible, whether or not it's real or not. If it's real, it's 100% possible. Like if they're really ET,
Right.
this stuff's possible. We have to figure it out. And if it's not, it's still not. It's not eliminated by the laws of physics. And that's why we got Dennin on the show, to make sure that we're talking about it's not eliminated by the laws of physics. And if it's possible within the laws of physics, then we can figure out how to make it, even if that's in 10 or 50 years. And I think really that exploration is incredible. And, look at Dennin. Dennin's a foam master, dust in the lungs. I believe you credited him as an astrologer. I didn't know that. I thought he was an astronomer. He knows everything. People like him were inspired by this fictional technology, and we want to be kind of like the next generation of that. Like that's why I love this stuff too. What is possible, what we see on the screen, can we do it in real life? I think that pushes science forward.
Awesome. Listen, we're running out of time here. If there's any place you guys want to send our audience, feel free. Dan, if you have another shameless plug, you want to plug something, now would be the time.
Dennin and I are always plugging something. I'll give you my plugs. To find me, DanielJGlenn.com has all of my projects. Twitter, Daniel J. Glenn. I'm on Facebook as The Analytical Mastermind. That's how I'm known online. Dennin's our physics phenom. YouTube, our shows are live on YouTube. We do for Fascinating Gadgets, Gizmos, FGGBT.com. You can find the show there specifically, but on YouTube, we're doing it /Daniel J. Glenn. And of course, Dennin and I are both on Instagram, and that's the Daniel J. Glenn.
And besides all the shows, you see my Twitter down below. It's @DenninMichael. Same for Instagram, @DenninMichael. The funny thing is, for Facebook, I don't know who out there is also a Michael Dennin, but I had to go with Prof. Dennin Michael to get my own Facebook page.
Unbelievable.
So the Prof is in front.
Go to Michael's page. You can see pictures of foam, talks about foam. There's blogs about foam.
Exactly.
It's fascinating stuff for all you foam fans out there.
Just beer head, and like,
Right.
Actually,
Foam hands.
for all the ridicule I've been giving you, you guys are great. We do really love having you on. It's a lot of fun,
you.
and it's fascinating, that physics stuff. That it's nice to know what's real and what we really can do, as opposed to a lot of people we have on here that don't necessarily know what they're talking about.
And we'll see you in
Ourselves included.
We tricked you. We've fooled you, and that's part of the.
Well, as I said earlier, everybody thinks I'm real. This is great.
Hologram. Well, we'll see you in a few weeks at
2
Contact
weeks
in
from
the Desert.
today.
Yep. We're very excited.
I will tell you this. So, can I say one other thing? Do we have a second?
Go ahead.
We can do. Go for it.
So Contact in the Desert, it's kind of tricky. What we do is not necessarily, it's a little outside the norm. And I think that's great. In a sense, we're doing a little counter programming, because what we do is we offer is what we're doing is very unique, and it's very fun, but there's also a lot of meat to it. There's a lot of science, and it's very relatable, because we're talking about technologies people have seen or they've loved since childhood, or they just went to the movies and saw. We've got pretty stiff competition for that particular time slot. And so I'm hoping that the unique nature of what we're doing is going to bring people in. And, I think it's a great, fun alternative. What do you think, Dan?
And if nothing else, they'll learn how to build their alien technology. They'll make lots of money, and we won't get any of it. So there's the deal.
It's a business opportunity.
Yep.
So make sure you come by and chat foam with these guys.
Right,
It'll be-
I think everybody should just bring a chunk of foam. Just
Yes, exactly. That would be fun.
Fingers, whatever.
right. All right, Daniel.
We'll see you guys in 2
Michael,
weeks.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you
All right,
then.
thank you, guys. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
You got it.
Pleasure.
And make sure you guys subscribe to our channel. Go to our YouTube channel, and then share every episode we have. It's almost 500 of them.
But you said we have to do something else.
Oh yeah, what do we have to do? Oh yeah, okay. All right, we're gonna put this in. I keep forgetting to do this. We have a survey that we would love to have you guys fill out. We're gonna put it in the chat room on our social medias. If you could fill that survey out for us, we'd really appreciate it, just to see where our
Super
demographics
fast.
are. So it takes you about 2 seconds. So, but go to our website, truthbetoldworldwide.com. Check out all our becoming guests. We have a lot coming up. Scott Walter, many other guests and speakers at Contact in the Desert. But until then, for Captain Ron and myself, we'll be back very soon. All right, talk to you soon. Bye.